Hi, and welcome to CreativeLive TV. We're back for our episode of the Work From Home Cafe with Andrew Scrivani. I'll remind everyone you're tuning in to CreativeLive TV we have it across all of our platforms on our website at creativelive.com/TV. We're streaming on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and we are excited to have you all joining us today. So make sure you're leaving us comments and telling us where you're tuning in from, and me and Andrew will talk to you throughout the show. Again, my name is Kate, and I'm excited to have Andrew back on the show. Hi, Andrew. How's it going?
Great. It's summer. It's hot, and we're gonna try to not use the stove today. So that's sort of where I'm at. And you can see, if you could see what I'm wearing today, I've abandoned the apron. It's too hot for me. I'm in my shorts, and as soon as we're done, I'm taking this food and going to the beach with it. So this is thematic in a way, about kind of low heat kind of situation. We're not going to use the stove too much. A lot of this is sort of cold ingredients. We're going to attempt to make something from my balcony garden.
Ooh, fun.
Recently doing an interview, and the interviewer asked me a question. He's like, what's your earliest food memory, or food like taste memory or smell memory? And I had to think about it for a second, but I always end up coming back to the little garden at the side of my grandmother's house when I was a kid, because she would be mostly growing basil and rosemary and herbs out there. She had some tomatoes and other things, but it was the basil that just resonated. It was just so powerful. And every time you came out the side door of the house, this wave of basil would catch you in the face. So now that I have a balcony, because I'm living here in New Jersey during the pandemic, I started growing my own herbs. So I decided, let me grow some basil of my own. And between the basil and the rosemary, I just like sitting out on the patio smelling those smells. It just kind of brings back all that memory. But the other thing about pesto, which, most people use the fresh basil for, which is what we're going to do today, it's really, really versatile. So I'm going to make sort of a classic pasta pesto for the beach. So it's a cold pasta pesto. I've already cooked the pasta. It's cooling on a sheet pan, which is a little bit of a stylist trick, which we'll talk about a little bit. And then we're going to use it on a flatbread that I've made flatbreads on a grill before, outdoor grill. We're going to try it on a stovetop, and we're going to see if we can make like a pesto flavored flatbread on the stovetop. So that's where we're at today. We're going to make some beach food, and we're going to use some of that fresh herbs from the garden, and try not to get overheated in the kitchen.
Well, I'll tell you, so I just planted my first garden this year, and one of the first things that I planted was basil, and then I have some cherry tomatoes, some onions, and some other herbs. But I love going out there because the basil is so fragrant. I think you're throwing in a little bit of tomato into your pesto, if I saw right.
Mm-hmm. You can see got some tomatoes here.
Nice.
And
so my little dog actually discovered our cherry tomato plant, and I had no idea that she would actually like tomatoes. But now I have to keep an eye on my tomato plants, because she'll just go out there and pluck them all off as soon as she has no interest in the green ones. As soon as they get ripe and she can start smelling them, she's the first one to get to them.
That doggy smell, it knows how to eat.
Yeah.
Pretty good. Cool. All right. Well, we're gonna get started here. The pesto is a very simple sauce. It's a very simple, easy sauce. It's got very few ingredients, but the ingredients that you use are all rather fragrant and powerful. And you'll notice that in this recipe, there's no salt, because salt is something you could always add later. And the cheese which calls for like Parmesan or Pecorino, I use the Pecorino, which is a little bit even saltier. Mm-hmm. So I think all of the salt will come from the cheese. But if I do feel it needs a little extra, I will add a little extra. And I use a little bit more garlic than most. I like it a little bit garlicky. So most recipes call for about 2 cloves. I'm going to add 1 extra. So we're going to go a little extra. The first thing I want to do is I'm going to use the stove just for a quick few minutes because let me show you my ingredients. Let's get you into my tabletop here. So you can see I got my fresh basil from my outdoor garden, but I also have the pine nuts. I think I'm a little askew here. Hold on one second. Let me straighten you out. There we go. Okay. All right. So I have some pine nuts, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to toast them. Now, a lot of times you buy them and they're already toasted, but quite honestly, they're never really toasted enough for my liking. And the more you toast them, the better they become. So I can't actually, it doesn't really help you to see that, but I can put you here like that.
So that's something actually, that's perfect. I always get nervous I'm going to burn my pine nuts. So you say like pine nuts, like because they're so expensive, I get a little nervous that I'm going to ruin them if I get them too toasty.
Yeah, I really don't leave them ever. You don't walk away from them.
Yeah, okay.
And just kind of let them, once you start to see them color, then you can turn the heat off. Because then the residual heat from the pan will continue to toast them. And you want to push them. You know, like there's a lot of things in cooking where the further you push it toward the edge where it's really not good anymore, the further you get there before you tip over makes it that much better. So like I remember talking to a famous, the son of a famous chef in New Orleans, was talking about how his mom, who was the famous chef, her name was Maud Anselay, said that she would push the roux, when she would make the roux to build all of the Cajun food on, push it to the absolute edge before burning. And just knowing that, you know, where that edge was the gift. You know, that was the thing that was the hardest. So you can see that I put them in there. I'm letting the heat build, but I'm also continually moving them around. You know, pine nuts, like a lot of nuts, have a lot of oil in them. So as soon as that oil starts to heat up, they're gonna go brown really fast, and they're really easy to burn. And once they burn, they're done. You can't use them.
Exactly. I've done that a couple times. So this is like the roux is something that you can't be doing too many things at once, and that's what something I end up doing in cooking a lot is trying to get everything going at the same time and then inevitably burning something in the process.
Yeah, since this is the only thing for this dish today that we're going to use the stove for, I'm going to focus on just this, and then we're going to just kind of move this over to the side until we're ready to put them in to the food processor or the blender. I'm going to use a Vitamix blender today, but I also sometimes use, as you can see now, we're getting color. So I'm going to turn the heat off. I'm going to turn the heat off and just let them kind of keep moving them around. I can smell it. You can smell it right now that they're really getting toasty. And if I keep moving them around, you can see that they're kind of catching some nice color now.
Oh yeah, those look great. So one of my favorite things about pesto is I was interested to see what type of pesto you were going to make. And you're going a very traditional style of pesto. I love pesto because you can kind of make pesto with just about any green and any nut. And so I'm interested to see what other people, you know, I wanted to ask people in the comments, tell us what kind of pesto you guys make. I was going to throw together some basil, arugula, and I was deciding between pine nuts and walnuts depending on what I could find, and I found some pine nuts. But I would love to hear what other people how other people like to make pesto.
Yeah, I mean, I've done it when I used to do the recipes for health column for the Times for many, many years. Martha Rose Schulman would very often do pestos with all sorts of different greens. I've done them with arugula, parsley, basil. What did you just say?
I've heard, I said arugula. I saw this winter, I saw carrot tops.
Okay, yeah, carrot tops. I've seen asparagus. one, but I've
That's
seen
really
it too.
interesting.
And then I've seen a combination of things, right? But I think I'm going straight Italian, kind of traditional. So I'm going to get you down back on the tabletop. So I need about 2 cups of leaves, no stems. I mean, if you get the little tender parts in there, that's okay. And when they say 2 cups, they usually mean 2 cups packed tight. So I would say probably more than I need, and I would like to save a little bit maybe for garnish for when we go and photograph. But I think, I take a 1 cup dry measure, and lost one, and kind of start just packing them in until I get about 2 cups. And my basil was flowering. You don't want to eat the flowers. You see this part here is flowering, so that's I don't think you want to eat that.
Okay.
So I'm gonna.
I wouldn't have known that. Yeah.
Yeah. This I think when they start flowering, it is an indication that you really should trim them back.
Gotcha.
So that when it's sort of time to start to cut them down a little bit so that they can regrow. And see, so 1 big stalk gave me close to a cup here. And I have, here's some more with the flower on it. So I'm going to take that off. That might be nice for garnish. So maybe we hold on to that. Could be pretty.
Yeah.
Unusual. It's essentially an edible flower. Okay, so that's about 1 cup packed. I'm going to dump that into my food processor and go for another cup. See how we're doing.
So I didn't really grow up eating pesto. It was something actually that I think growing up I always thought was much fancier than it is. And then my husband's mother makes an amazing pesto, and I started making it, but it was always something that in my head was fancy. And then you grow up and you learn more about food, and it's just funny the things that you just because you didn't have them growing up, you assume were nuanced or out of reach in some capacity. There's some reason you didn't have it, and it was really just because my family is not Italian, and so it wasn't a normal thing for us to do.
Yeah, I mean, I think that the kind of aromatics like basil, where in Indian culture it's more like curry leaf, and then that was sort of foreign to me for a very long time. And then once I started to get in touch with that flavor as an eater, it really opened my mind to the kind of options with that flavoring that was really now I gravitate to, which wasn't something that was true years ago. And it's just about becoming familiarized with new things. So we got those little flowers. I got about 2 cups. Okay, so first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to see if I can bring you over here. Can you see that? You kind of can see that.
A little bit, yeah. There we go.
I kind of lost my AirPods. I don't know why, but I'm going to take them out.
I can still hear you just fine.
Yeah, them out. I don't know why I lost them. Okay, so what I have here is my 2 cups of basil leaf, and then I'm going to dump in the pine nuts that we.
And remind me how much pine nuts are in there?
It was 2 tablespoons of pine nut.
Okay.
And I'm going to dump in the garlic, and I'm going to do a little grind of pepper. Okay. So then what I'm going to do is get this in there, put it on a low setting, grind it up a little, and then I'm going to start adding the oil. I have about a half a cup of oil here.
Okay. And this is just olive oil, right?
Yes.
Do you have a go-to olive oil that you like?
No, not really. I mean, I like olive oil from Umbria when I have the opportunity.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're gonna don't do that at home. Okay, so is not a lot of stuff in here, and I think that's probably why we're having a problem.
Yeah, this is sometimes when I'm making pesto, I go for my little like ninja bullet because it's smaller, and yeah, the big blender sometimes doesn't.
Okay, you know what? We're gonna make an adjustment, on the fly adjustment.
All right.
Let's see, where did that go? Here it is. Mini chop.
There we go.
All right, got a mini chop, and we're gonna plug it in right here, and we're gonna transfer everything into the mini chop. Ah, the joys of live television.
Yeah, usually when I'm making like a sauce or something, sometimes the Vitamix is just a little too big to get everything grated up the right way or blended up the right way.
Yeah, unless you have a lot of liquid, it's not as good.
Yeah.
Although, I mean, it did give me a nice chunky kind of flavor thing going on here. So, all right, so we're gonna do this. Get this all out. So everyone out there watching, if you have a Vitamix, you know that it'll work. It's just gonna take some minutes. Probably. Okay, mini chop. And now I'm gonna add in my cheese and then give it a whirl in this mini chop.
And that's pretty finely grated cheese. Does it need to be that grated, or did you buy it pre-grated?
Yeah, I did.
Yeah.
Now, there it is. And that's
there we go.
it gets. I mean, that was about a 3-minute preparation without the error, the unforced error on my part. So I think if you want to get that a little creamier, you can. It might be a little chunky for some people. I'm going to give it a little bit of a extra whirl. Yeah, that's pretty creamy now.
All right.
Looking good. So, you know, a little pesto goes a long way. So when I made this one last week, I only used about half of it on the pasta because I wanted to reserve some of it for something else. Now, like what I was saying earlier, when you have some pesto in your fridge, clearly you could use it for lots of different things. I've used it for dips, for like veggie dips and things like that. Put it on pasta. You put it on fish. I've put it on chicken. It's really nice as sort of, you can even actually, if you add some other ingredients to it, like we were talking about earlier, you can use it like a chip dip. It's a little garlicky for that. The way I made it, it might be a little garlicky for that to hold up to chips, but absolutely it's an option.
And what's a good fish that holds up with pesto?
I mean, I've used salmon. I've used sole. I think pretty much anything that you like the flavor of. I mean, something that has a really powerful, distinct flavor like bluefish or something like that might be too much.
Okay.
I think that like a neutral flavored fish is pretty nice for that. So I'm going to get a bowl here. Now, this is what I wanted to talk about. You can see this. When we work with pastas in a food styling setting, very often we'll cook the pasta ahead of time, toss it with olive oil, and spread it out on a sheet pan like this. Now, for today, I did this for 2 reasons. One, I wanted to give that lesson that this is always a very good option when you're working with pasta because you want to have the opportunity to have it not stick together. For today, it's nice because I'm also trying to cool the pasta down because I'm making a cool dish. So you can see all this pasta is going to come and it's not sticking together because it's all been cooled and it has some olive oil on it already, which of course for this dish is perfectly okay. And then I'm going to add a couple of tablespoons to start. And I'm going to mix that through and see how much coverage I get. This is a little under a pound of pasta. And like I said, a little goes a long way, and it doesn't really have to be super powerful. So I feel like I'm getting decent coverage, but I would like a little bit more. So maybe I'll go one more big tablespoon. And that's really nice. And I used a ridged pasta. This is a ziti with the lines in it. And the reason that different pastas have different shapes and different configurations is really about how the sauce is going to adhere to it. So you can see I got a nice coverage there. And I got these beautiful kind of cherry tomatoes, grape tomatoes, I guess is more like it. And I'm going to put these in quarters.
What is the difference between a grape tomato and a cherry tomato?
Well, a cherry tomato is rounder.
Okay.
And a plum tomato a grape tomato actually looks more like a grape, like the shape of.
Okay.
I know that we get them we do them kind of interchangeably.
Yeah.
Stuff because, but honestly, this is really more of a grape tomato than a cherry tomato.
Okay.
So I'm going to add not so many, and that's why I'm also cutting them in quarters because I want to have small pieces of tomato in here. I don't want it to be overpowering. And then I want to see if I need to add a little bit more pesto. And then I'm going to season afterwards. I want to see if it needs any more cheese, if it needs any more salt and pepper. So I guess I'm adding about half the container. So maybe that's a half a pint of these.
And what's something else you might throw in a pesto pasta besides tomatoes to freshen it up?
Yeah, I think you can do a little bit of parsley, which is a nice touch. You put a little bit of fresh parsley. If you want a little heat, a little red pepper.
Yeah.
You can add, which is always nice in any kind of pasta dish. So I think those are the two that I most commonly do. But honestly, I think also I have like some grilled chicken in the fridge, and I may, decide to add some of that. Or if you have if you wanted to put a little pancetta in that, how can you go wrong with that? So, all right. So I have that. I feel like I have nice enough coverage there. I do want to give it a nice grind.
Yeah.
And then I'm going to take a taste. This is all gluten-free pasta because I can eat it. I am cooking for me today. So I'm going to give that a little bit. Let me get a fork.
And do you think this type of pasta fits pesto the best? Or what is this your go-to pesto pasta?
For the beach.
Okay.
Okay, that needs a little bit of salt. So I'm going to add a little salt. Stir it through. And I have a pretty salty palate, so I think ultimately it's good for me to do this because if I go right off the bat, I may oversalt the food for other people I'm eating with. So I have to be careful. Yeah, that's perfect. Okay, so I like my pasta al dente too, so it's a little chewy. So we got that, and that's going to be something we're going to take over there in a minute. But I also wanted to experiment with this flatbread. So I took a piece of pizza dough out of the fridge, and I've done this on a grill before, outdoors, where you take a piece of pizza dough and you put it on the grill, and then you can season it, brush it with, I've done it with rosemary oil or done it with pesto or even tomato oil, where you can kind of make like a little mini pizza on the grill. or like a focaccia, really more like that.
Yeah.
So we're gonna experiment today. Let me show you what I did. I had a ball of pizza dough, and I kind of just stretched it out in the pan.
Okay.
Just bring you over here. I'm letting that heat up a little bit because I want the pan to get really hot. And I've already sort of soaked this in oil. I'm gonna give it a flip in the pan.
And is this store-bought pizza dough, or did you make this pizza dough?
I made it. It is my go-to pizza dough recipe, which is from David Tanis,
Okay.
which is one of the authors that I work with at the Times. Let me show you what I'm doing.
Oh, you're putting the pesto on before. That wasn't what I was expecting.
Yeah, I'm going to put this on here first, and then I'm going to flip it because I'm going to put it on both sides.
Okay.
I mean, you have to cook it on both sides to get it to be like kind of crispy and puffy. So I'm going to slide it right out of this pan and into that pan. And hopefully it starts to puff up. And then when I flip it, that pesto will be on there already, and then I'll put the other one on.
All right. We have a couple questions coming in from Facebook. One is, would you ever use cilantro to make pesto?
I think you probably could, but cilantro is really kind of a different fragrance, and I don't know that it necessarily goes as well. But honestly, I would try it. Why not? If you love cilantro, it's something that, if you think about it, cilantro goes pretty well with garlic, I don't know that's the one part of it that I'm not quite that sure. But we can try.
Yeah, because cilantro has a little bit more of a sour instead of bitter flavor to it. It feels like you could try it, but it might be a very unique pesto.
All right, so far so good. It's in there.
And so you switched from the cast iron. This isn't something you would do on a cast iron?
That up. Do it face down first. It's all right. It doesn't have to be round.
No.
I switched to the cast iron because the cast iron would have been like if I was going to put it in the oven. But I wanted it the right shape. Of course, I messed that up. But but you can see it's already puffing up a little bit. And once that, I'm going to check underneath it in a second. And once it's really brown and nice on one side, I'm going to flip it and see what I got. That'll be the big test.
All right.
Now we watch paint dry.
So do you make a lot of pizza at home?
I do. The only way I can really eat pizza, quite honestly, is cooking it at home, because I make it either with bread, with doughs that I know I can digest, or I make them gluten free.
Yeah.
The gluten free pizzas you buy at at the store or at the pizza shop are not really ever. They're always like kind of mass created. They make them and then the pizzerias have them.
Yeah.
So it never really does anything for me.
What are your thoughts on cauliflower crust pizzas?
I've had it once before. It didn't particularly agree with me, so I wasn't really fond.
Okay.
I don't know what it is, but I don't really. I don't quite understand all the problems I have with my stomach anyway. So it's sort of, I'm a little bit of an enigma. Why certain things don't agree with me.
Yeah. Looking pretty good. Oh, look at how brown that is.
Yeah, that's looking like a flatbread to me.
Yeah.
Actually, a little nicer than when you do it on the grill. Because when you do it on the grill, it's not quite. It's got the grill marks and it gets puffy, but it's not quite as rich because the oil is what's really making that beautiful.
Yeah, that's true. And you just put a little bit of olive oil in the pan before you flipped it over?
Well, I had put the olive oil in the pan with the dough. So that was sitting in olive oil, like soaking in olive oil.
Gotcha.
But when I threw it in the pan, it was already pretty well done. In terms, it was pretty well
oiled.
Yeah, I'm gonna cut up some tomatoes while we're doing this. I can do them close to here so you can see my hands. I'm gonna cut up some tomatoes so that we can kind of scatter them on there, and then maybe some fresh basil for our little.
All right.
And we have a couple of little things we can photograph today. How about questions? Anybody have any questions?
Here.
Okay, so.
What if you don't have pine nuts? What is your go-to nut? Your
Walnut.
pesto. Walnut. Okay.
Yep. Okay. So we got that. I'm going to decorate that right there. I'm going to take that off the stove, and I'm going to bring this over here. Just give me 1 second. Clean up my mess.
All right. While you're doing that, I'll remind everybody you're watching Creative Live TV. My name is Kate. I am the co-host with Andrew Scrivani, and this is the Work From Home Cafe. We're streaming it to our site, creativelive.com/TV, and across all our social media platforms. Today, Andrew is showing us how to make pesto pasta and a little easy at-home flatbread. All right.
So I'm going to add a tiny bit of more pesto to these tomatoes.
Okay.
And then I added a little olive oil. I'm going to add a pinch of salt. And then I'm going to just kind of scatter these on here on my flatbread. And I have some kind of fresh basil left. Probably
that's beautiful. Basil makes everything more pretty.
Did you just come downstairs and say, "Oh wow"? Awesome.
She must smell it.
Okay, so here's our flatbread, which I'm gonna put on a little plate.
That looks great.
So there's our little flatbread that I made. And then our pasta is over here. And I think it's time to go over to the window. So I'm going to start getting going over there. I also want to photograph the pesto in a bowl. So like a macro shot of the pesto in a bowl. So I'm going to get that ready too. So let me get this over to the table.
And so I'll remind everybody, or I'll tell everybody what we were talking about before we got on, which is that you're actually taking this dish to the beach with you right after, because there's some amazing waves. Actually, yep. And so we're making a good, simple summer dish that is portable. It's a great beach dish. And I'm going to test out this flatbread. I just happened to be making, Andrew texted me this morning and told me he wanted to make pesto. And I have all the ingredients for pesto at my house. So I'm going to be following along tonight and test out this flatbread too.
So I have a number of photographs that I've made over the years of, I know I'm talking off camera and I apologize, this isn't nearly enough to fill this up. Okay, that's fine. We'll do it again after. But I was putting it in a bowl for like dipping, but okay. Be there in a second. I'm going to bring the other camera over so that at least you can kind of see me in the wide.
All right.
Okay. That's better. All right, so I'm gonna get my pasta, and I'm gonna do it on a plate. And like I've said in the past, I usually downsize my plates for things like plated food, because I want everything to give me a more space to get a macro shot. So everything gets a little smaller in that situation.
And I've noticed that most of the plates you use still have like a bit of a lip, and they're very flat plates. And did you buy these plates that you use specifically because they're good for photographing, or was that just coincidental?
These plates are the ones just for home. They didn't really play in terms of how we were going to do photography here, because I don't really shoot here professionally that much. Other here. So those are really more just for eating, but a flat plate does work really well. I don't usually like stuff that has too much of a lip on it.
Gotcha.
Seem to have worked out okay. So
yeah, totally.
What I'm going to work on here, I got the pasta. I want to grab a little bit more cheese from the fridge. I have the basil leaves for the garnish and the little flowers that we had before. I'm going to kind of prep everything right on the table as we're working. And then I'm going to, obviously, I've said this on a number of occasions when we're working, is that I plate the food and then I always have chopsticks with me to reposition the food the way I want it. So let's see if you can see me where I'm here.
There we go.
I'm going to kind of start to get the food going onto this plate. And I think I'm going to do like a multi dish shot here, a little different than the past.
Yeah, we haven't kind of seen how you position, multiple dishes, and that will be great to watch.
So, okay, so I'm going to keep the food toward the center of the plate. I'm going to try to give a good balance of the colors without making it look too contrived. And then if I need to fill in a spot, I can just do that with individual pieces of pasta or tomato. I want it to feel like it sort of is here organically, but I also want to have good balance knowing I'm going to be shooting this from the top.
Yeah. So Rick Van Cleve from Facebook has a suggestion for you for your diet, and was wondering if you've ever tried more probiotics to your diet, such as kefir or kimchi or Cleveland kraut, and seen if they've helped with digestion. He says his wife has been introducing them to his diet, and it's been helpful for him.
Well, it's interesting that you say that, because I do eat a lot of kimchi. My wife is Korean, as we've established on a number of occasions here, and I do absolutely eat things like that are fermented foods because they help me with digestion. So yes, that's a great suggestion, and I really appreciate it. So are you getting a good enough view there? Are you okay? I lost your audio.
I was muting myself.
Oh, because okay. Is that okay? Are we okay with that? Okay, this is going to come off this plate now, because I think it'll look way more organic on that tabletop. And then I have some fresh basil for our garnish, which I don't normally do like the big leaf of basil. I feel like that's a little bit precious for me, and I prefer to kind of tear the basil, give it more of a natural feel. I usually soak my greens in ice water before I put the food, but today this is literally cut from the garden like a half an hour before we started, so it doesn't really get much fresher than that.
And the ice water just makes the colors of the greens a little brighter and more vibrant?
Yes.
Okay.
Absolutely. I got these little flower guys there. I'm not going to do that yet. I want to get a smaller container for our extra pesto, which I have right here.
Are you going to add utensils here, or are you just going to leave it as all the dishes?
Say that again?
Are you going to add some utensils to the shot?
Well, I already put a fork in.
Oh, I just didn't see it yet.
And I'm going to add a sprinkle of grated cheese. And I may add a little here too. Why not? What's the harm in it? And then a quick grind of black pepper. And I accidentally turned on the blender.
So
Okay.
something I notice about a lot of your photography is that you're not too precious with the messiness. Like, you're okay with a little grind of pepper landing off the plate. Same with the Parmesan. I've always, when I take a photo, it feels like it needs to be so clean to feel professional. But, you do such a good job at making it feel authentic to actually cooking and making it look beautiful at the same time.
Well, thank you. And that's what I'm hoping to accomplish in what I do, is that feeling that you're there in the moment, in the space. And oh boy, I'm happy with that. Look at.
Oh, yum. That looks so good.
So we have some, it's really pretty. I wish I could get a little higher. I'm going to get a step stool. Real quick. I'm spending a lot of time off camera today, Kate. I don't know. So you're gonna unfortunately see my back here for a minute because I'm gonna get.
All right. Well, this is a great shot of food.
So I'm gonna get up a little higher so I can get on top of this and have that nice surface.
So when you have dishes like, you have two dishes, how are you deciding what the focal point is? Are you finding your focus kind of in the middle, so both dishes are somewhat of a focal point, or are you focusing on one of the dishes and then letting the other one fade to the background?
Well, from the top, basically everything's going to be in focus as long as I focus on the high point between the two pictures, right? Because if with the aperture set, as long as I'm focused on the high point, everything else underneath will fall into focus. If I'm here shooting this way, I'm thinking about the pasta dish first.
Yeah.
Then bringing the other stuff in to the background a little bit. And you can see that even though I picked up a little bit of the tripod, you can still see that. Oh, there we go. You can still see that in the front.
Yeah.
Back. Okay, so I'm gonna get a few shots of everything here. Like I wanna feel like I'm getting this whole table. So I'm gonna kind of work my way around the table a little bit and get different shots of both a side lit and a back lit look. And I really like what I'm getting. This is sort of a perspective shot from here, 3/4.
Yeah.
And then we already have the overhead. That's a little bright. We have nice light.
I was wondering if you have any cleaning, recommendations when you're getting greens from the grocery store right now. If there's anything special you're doing. I know these greens specifically are from your own garden, but in terms of washing, sometimes you feel like you shouldn't wash things too much. when they're, delicate greens, but now given COVID, how rigorous are you cleaning your greens?
Well, I always wash everything, but one of the ways I wash my greens is I soak them first.
Okay.
I soak them in cold water and let them sort of like whatever grit or anything that we have, settle it to the bottom of the bowl, rinse it out, do it again. I think that's a really good practice in general.
Yeah.
So I'm doing the reverse of what I just shot because I want to see if I can make the flatbread the star and pull that pesto in a little bit as our extra. Now, one of the things I do pretty regularly with any sauces or anything that I have working is I like to make it look like the sauce is being incorporated into the photograph. So I take a little of the sauce, I put it on a spoon. I might drip a little right outside the bowl, and then sort of leave the dirty spoon there like that, as if we just used it for something. And I'll show you that shot now.
We have a question from YouTube coming in. What's the hardest? Oh, down just a little bit more. There we go. Yeah, there we go. That looks great. Oh yeah, I can. That pop of the green on the spoon is really nice.
So, and if I did this sort of this way, and eliminated the pasta from the shot, I still have a really nice shot here of the flatbread that.
Oh yeah, that's great.
So you have
that's beautiful
opportunities with the lighting, with what's going on with the tabletop. I can move myself around a little. I can get close. Oh yeah, so that's nice.
Oh yum, that looks so good.
And then, of course, you can start doing this kind of routine where you start removing some of the food.
Yeah. Do you ever play with stop motion, where you're kind of taking bites of the food and it's disappearing? Have you ever done any stop motion with food before?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Oh no, sorry. You actually took those bites. That's one of the perks to being an at-home food photographer right now.
Yeah, you have to use what's available to you, So, moving around a little bit, just kind of getting a sense of that some of this has been eaten. And let me see if that looks better. It's okay. The flatbread is definitely the star today. And we're feeling like the versatility, that's the thing. And I think showing, like, if you're talking about narrative, which we haven't really spoken as much about narrative in terms of telling food stories.
Yeah.
If we're talking about narrative in this particular sense, what I really want to portray here is the versatility of the recipe, right? So we're making a pesto. The pesto has a lot of qualities that you can use in a lot of different ways. And by showing it laid out with two different recipes, plus the actual master recipe all in the same shot, you're selling the idea visually, narratively, that this one dish can be very versatile. So ultimately, like, you think about planning out your shots, you think about planning out your menu and how you want to execute it in a visual way, and then what is the story that you want to tell. So ultimately, my major narrative today was that pesto sauce is super versatile, and it's really good to make things that you can kind of take with you on the go. So I think, like, having it look a little picnicky might have also been a way to tell this story.
Yeah.
So if but I mean, showing food packed up to go is usually a problem. But if I had Like sometimes I have like a red wood, like a barn door that looks like a faded picnic table.
Oh,
And
okay.
it's slatted wood. And you kind of get the feeling through the propping that we're in an outdoor setting, you know, that we're sitting in the park or we're sitting at a picnic table and we're enjoying this food outdoors. So that's, you know, there's lots of ways to layer in the narrative for food stories that go beyond just making the food look pretty. So in that same interview that I referenced at the beginning of today's show, I was talking about the fact that layering the narrative is more important than ultimately the beauty shot. In that,
Interesting.
it doesn't always, you know, the beauty shot is there has a purpose, right? The beauty shot is there to draw in the reader. The reality is, if you really want to tell the story, there are shots that come before and after the beauty shot that have a little bit more resonance in a food perspective in terms of tapping people's emotional reservoir of what they remember about food. You know, and a lot of the things we've talked about in the last 3 or 4 weeks is the personal connection that we have to the foods that we're making, whether it be through my relationship or through my family or through your family. We've covered a lot of ground here in terms of sort of the emotional components of food and how understanding your subject matter, not just knowing how to make food or knowing how to plate it or shoot it, but also understand why we shoot food and what it is that people respond to when we present them with really good food work. You know, when we tell good food narratives and why they resonate. More than making me hungry, I want to make you hungry, but I also want to make you think, you know? And I think that all good art is meant to make you feel something, right? It's whether it's good architecture or painting or sculpture, you stand there in front of it and it makes you ask a question, right? Or it makes you think of something, or it makes you angry, or it makes you happy, but it elicits emotion. And I think that a lot of times we sterilize food photography in the beauty shot to where it doesn't feel like it's related to anything anymore. And I want, if you're learning from me, to understand that my ethic is that I want you to feel something about the food, the picture, the story, the narrative, the emotional connection. Yeah, I can make the beauty shot, but a lot of people can make the beauty shot. But can everybody tell the story?
Totally.
Right? At the end of the day, we're journalists. We just happen to be in a medium that gives us something that is universal to play with, which is a gift.
Amazing, yeah.
It's a gift to be able to have the opportunity to tell stories that everyone can relate to if you do them well.
Yeah.
And I think that ultimately that's sort of where I think I got in touch with that really early on when I started doing this work, because it was very personal for me. And I think that this particular show and doing it with you has brought that full circle, because we both feel the need to connect emotionally to the food as much as we do telling the stories about the food, you know, or showing the pictures of the food, or showing you how to make the picture of the food. You know? So there's all this technical stuff we do. We cook the food. We talk about the aspects of what it means to make food. And we talk about the technical aspects of cooking it. But I don't want the aspect of why we do it to get lost. Because I think the why is why we're good at it.
Yeah, absolutely. And the why is why, you know, the story behind the food is everyone's had an amazing, delicious meal, but it's your mom's or your grandmother's, or the story behind your friend's grandmother's amazing lasagna that really makes you connect with food in a different way.
Absolutely. And I think that you think about how often we have those conversations, right? Think about how often we talk about a shared recipe, or a memory attached to food, or an emotion attached to food, or a special occasion attached to food, or a holiday attached to food, and how everybody has those, right?
Yeah.
I mean, we're involved in a universal storytelling theme. And I just think the more we access those feelings, the better we can be in telling these stories visually. And, you know, sometimes it's not as easy as other times, but I think you go in with intention. And I think as long as you go at it with an honest intention to tell a story, some of that comes through, even though sometimes the food isn't as cooperative, or the setting isn't as cooperative, or the lighting isn't as cooperative. You know, that happens. But if you come at it with an honest intent to say, hey, I want to tell this story and I think that it's going to resonate with people, then, you know, you're not going to bat 1,000, but you know what? You're probably going to have a good high 300 batting average.
Yeah. I'll tell you a little story that, so I subscribe to the New York Times cooking app, and
we appreciate it.
Now I seek out recipes where I can find photos of that you've taken, because I have this like connection. And now when I look at the food and it's a photo that you've done, it tells a story, and I have this connection to you that, like, when I'm making that food, it feels even that much more special, because I know that the story behind it, or the person behind this story, and it's really nice. It adds another level of fun to cooking, because I feel like, oh, like Andrew has gone through these steps as well, and like I'm trying to recreate this beautiful dish that I'm never remotely as beautiful as yours, but it's still this connection that I have when I'm cooking something that I know that you've also cooked and created yourself, and that's a really fun thing to do.
Well, that's nice, and I'm glad you feel that way. I mean, I've had other friends or people that didn't know me from this life, you know, people who knew me from prior lives when I was a teacher or whatever, who feel that they can connect again very similarly and know me differently because of the work. And I think that's personal for me, is that if you feel like you can know me a little bit through my work, that's really
that's
big
the goal.
It's a very big compliment for an artist to be told that you are reaching people with the work, you know, and that's really cool, and I appreciate that.
Yeah, well, I'm excited to I'm going to add this flatbread to my dinner tonight for my husband's birthday, so I'm excited to test this out too. Well, I'll remind everyone, this is Andrew Scrivani. He is a New York Times food photographer and one of my favorite CreativeLive instructors. He has several amazing food photography classes on creativelive.com, including a new social media food photography class and a food photography class that is for mobile photography. Those just came out, 4 months ago now. Those are some of our newest classes.
I filmed them I literally
right before COVID.
Yeah, as COVID started in Seattle.
Yeah.
I remember being at CreativeLive, and that Microsoft and a lot of the other companies had already sent their workers home.
Yeah,
that was the first week in March.
Yep, that was last time I was in Seattle. Yeah, that was a while ago. So everyone go check out the classes. They're amazing classes. They're really fun. And catch up with our previous episodes. We have a link to our previous episodes. I'll drop it in the comments so you guys can check out some of the other recipes we've made. And we will see you guys next week. Thanks again for joining us.
Thank you.
Bye.
Guys, what's up? It's Chase Jarvis, founder and CEO of CreativeLive. You all know that we have more than 2,000 classes and more than 10,000 hours of learning, inspirational, and motivational content on the platform. I'm super excited to announce a new experience on CreativeLive class. You've told us that you're busy and sometimes it's hard to dive into a full class from start to finish. So essentially, we're now giving you a shortened highlight version of our top CreativeLive classes. You can always dive into the full class with 5, 10, or 15 hours of great content. But now, if you're just looking to focus on a few of the highlights or want to be able to skip quickly to something that really interests you, you can now get a shortened, fast class version of that class. We're also thinking this might be able to help you explore a new craft and save time while doing it. this is a great tool to curate your learning experience to help create the life that you seek. So you're probably thinking, great, how do I access this new experience on CreativeLive? That's easy. All you have to do is be a subscriber to the Creator Pass, and then all this is yours. If you're feeling isolated and looking for creative connection, try tuning into creativelive.com/TV. That's where we've got a 24/7 live stream from the kitchen counters.
I can do that backlit shot that I really like to do.
From the studios and living rooms of many of the world's top creators, where we're doing musical performances, Q&As, cooking shows, virtual book tour events, drawing, spoken word poetry, and more.
Life passed me by waiting for an invitation when the world is greater than my nation or my occupation. Be someone you've never been. You feel all that adrenaline, it's medicine.
It actually helps me feel like my days are more purposeful.
I hope that out of this deep pain will come some collective growth.
Dive into CreativeLive TV today.